Hey, it's Mets Wrap 360. There's a lot to talk about, but we're going to focus a lot of the show on one word 7 times. Jose, 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 Jose. Mets Wrap starts now.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, look at this. It's a party in here.
Changing it up.
That's right.
Jose, Jose, Jose.
A lot of happy memories of this song. Not as many happy memories as the Meet the Mets song, but, you know, look, it's a big day, a big week for the New York Metropolitans. And they basically... How many years ago was it, Matt, that we that Jose signed with the Miami Marlins? Was it 2012? 2011, yeah, after the 2011 season. So and they spent millions of dollars on him, but the Mets have him for the Mets are going to get him for $300,000, and we'll talk more about that in a second. Welcome to Mets Wrap 360. I'm Christian Bladt at Christian DMZ. Next to me, Andrea Fasano at Andy Fasano, and way down at the far end of the desk, Matt Ritter at Matt Ritter 1.
What is up, Mets Nation?
Yeah.
And in a few minutes, we're going to be joined by a special guest. That'll be exciting. Actor comedian Joe, is it Praino? Or okay, I want to make sure that there's no like the N is silent or something crazy. He co-hosts the Dirty Sports podcast, and I love what his Twitter is. At Fix Your Life. I'll have to ask him about that. Because like I was putting the message together and I'm like, okay, at Joe Praino. No, that's a different. It's like just some guy who likes to ride his bike in the morning. And I'm like, well, that's not him.
Joe's got opinions. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I think he's going to disagree with my excitement that, first of all, this is not the same black jersey that I wore to commemorate Johan Santana's no-hitter. If I spin around, I don't even know if you'll see it. For those that are watching, but it's the Reyes, which I thought I'd never get to wear again, and you know that right there is reason enough to be excited. But then also, I posted this online. It's a bottle of Cabernet, a wine that I bought, and Matt was like, "Well, when did you get that? Like 10 years ago?" I'm like, "No, it was 8. It was 8 years ago." And I'm gonna bring this to the show every day, and if Jose does something that's really beneficial and he contributes in a good way to the team, then we'll drink it on the show. We'll see if we get to open it. Haven't opened it yet.
Most domestic violence incidents do start with too much wine.
Oh,
right,
man,
exactly. Which
there,
you bring in the angle
that
sure, I'll pass it to you, Andrew. Take a look. Look, there's a lot of things that makes it a great signing for the Mets because it's just a gamble. It was $300,000. Even the Mets, when they don't want to spend money, they can spend that sort of money. His production is way down. I saw him playing, this is like 3 years ago for the Blue Jays, maybe only 2 years ago. He was playing for the Blue Jays in a game in Anaheim, and he just was not enjoying baseball. He was just there punching a time card. And, you know, I think he lost some of that fire, and he also lost a lot of his ability. But as Keith Hernandez said on the broadcast, if there's any way for Jose to kind of reignite whatever's left for his career, going to New York is it. Matt, first your thoughts on, just from the baseball perspective, taking this chance and what it could mean.
It could mean very little.
Yeah.
He's a shell of a baseball player at this point. You know, he's, I don't know, I mean, he did steal 24 bases, which would be more than our entire team.
They have 14 bases stolen.
But I just don't see him playing every day at all. I don't see him being better than anybody that we're putting out there at either third or the outfield.
There's a lot of talk. Yeah, he might play in the outfield.
You know, I just don't necessarily see it. I mean, look, as a pinch hitter, as a pinch runner, sure, we might get some utility here and there, or you know, just days off. Look, we don't have a great roster, so you know, it's kind of like anybody you add to this squad
we'll
is
change it up a bit.
Fine.
Look, if he takes playing time away from Matt Reynolds, I'm going to be okay with that.
I don't know about that. I'm, you know, look, again, it's too early to write the book on Reynolds, but you got to think Reynolds is on the way up, and we already know Reyes is on the way down. But look, there's a chance that he does something, wins a game here and there, sure, I will take it. I feel that it's unprincipled to be one of those clubs that signs domestic abusers, although no court found him guilty, so it's a bit of a gray area.
Right, which is why I wanted to talk to Andrea about this. When this happened, I was, there was a chance that you were going to be in Nashville and unable to join us, so I'm glad that you're here.
Me too.
To give us the female perspective on this, because Matt and I, we don't know anything about, lady stuff. So
I'm so sorry for you guys.
Is that just lady stuff?
Yeah. So no, but it's an issue that we're looking at it like look, it could work from a baseball perspective, makes sense. But what do you think about the team signing a guy who there was a police report, all this, there was an incident, and his wife ultimately didn't press charges,
right? And
he's in counseling and all that. Ultimately, how do you feel about signing someone that has this kind of history?
Well, I'll preface with this: the fact that thankfully I have not experienced something like this. So although I am female, I cannot speak to that issue as a whole or from any sort of experience. Thankfully, I will just say that obviously reading about it, I kind of have this feeling that I always have when there's these huge names and professional people that get paid so much freaking money and do wrong. I don't care if it's drugs, like models even that are caught like doing, you know what I mean? If you're caught, I just feel like you're exposed.
Inexplicably running a dogfighting ring in your basement.
Exactly.
Just picking that out of nowhere. Nobody did that.
Nobody
just
did
a thought
that.
in
Right.
my head.
And I totally hear it. You get it. Because I just feel like there's so much talent out there. Why do we have to keep getting these people? Now, people make mistakes. There's an argument for that.
Sure.
Fine. Although he wasn't, didn't have to go to court and everything like that. Like, although it was dropped because the wife didn't say anything, he is apologetic and he said he did it.
He obviously did.
Exactly. Yeah. And he sat out a long time for it. He lost some money for it. Yeah. Not a lot.
There's still $40 million more that the Rockies have to pay him after cutting him.
Okay. So I don't like it. I just don't think, to Matt's point, what's the point? Like, you can't find anybody else. I kind of like on the baseball side that, like, yeah, he's an ex-Mets player. And maybe, let's just talk baseball right now. Ex-Mets player, really loved his time there, lives on Long Island, loves that, So
very popular
with
the fans.
Very popular with the fans. Had a huge long run there and a good one. I see him coming back and actually maybe stepping up a little more in a bit of thanks to the fans and to the team and the club and everything like that. There's a huge side of me that has a problem with anybody, I don't care who you are, giving someone like this a second chance, a third chance, a whatever chance, and it does bother me. It irks me a bit.
Well, there's
but I would
something
like to
about
see him kind of shine almost in the fact, in light of that.
Now, it makes sense that the Blue Jays traded him last year because they got Troy Tulowitzki, a much better all-around player than Reyes, especially at this state. But they did trade him, in the middle of a pennant chase, and then he ended up in Colorado, where he clearly was not happy about having been traded, and he didn't understand the whole thing. So we'll see. If the Mets continue to be playing at least reasonably well and he's contributing, he'll probably give it his all. But if we get to the middle of August and they're, 15 games out of the wild card, well, then why would we be doing this show? But besides that, I don't know how hard he's going to play.
Yeah, but I think he's going to play hard because, this is his last chance.
This is definitely his last chance.
This is, last exit, for him.
I mean, Terry Collins said it's a second chance, with
and I
conditions.
believe, people are fallible, they make mistakes, yada, yada. I don't, personally, I think, domestic violence in the scheme of things to me is far on that end of like low character. Like I'd rather have somebody who did some drugs.
Right.
Yes.
Violence to me is like that. That's like really.
There's no excuse.
Yeah, there's no excuse. Like
drugs.
You're hurting yourself. You're an addict. You're an addict. You're not addicted to beating people.
There's a few guys with Mets World Series rings that had drug problems. So obviously it's a lot easier to kind of move past.
But look, the thrift store scrap heap. I'll pick anybody up for $300,000 at this point.
And that's another point that I thought about. I was like, especially when the Rockies are going to pay off whatever else.
$40 million.
Like, come on.
$38 million.
Okay, you're right.
And he's going to get it anyway. So it's like, you don't win from my perspective as talking about this. Like, my opinion doesn't matter at this point, but it does. And that's a really good point too, I think.
Well, we'll see. And, if he plays well, I think it'll become something that people don't talk about. And it's probably one of the only places he could go back to is to New York,
I agree, and I think that they might play it.
Yeah, so I believe our guest is with us now, and I believe Joe Praino is with us, who co-hosts the Dirty Sports podcast, and his Twitter, as I mentioned earlier, I'm very excited about this, is @FixYourLife. His website is joepraino.com. Joe, welcome to Mets Wrap 360.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Joey, we got you on here. I love it.
So first and foremost, it's almost like something about being a Mets fan. I talked about this in our first show when Jim Brewer was here. When you find out someone's a Mets fan, it's almost like you need to know, like, well, what happened? It's like, did you choose this? Because it's not something that a lot of us willingly decide, like, yes, I need to have, I need to be the fan of the second fiddle team in New York. So where exactly are you from in the New York area, and how did you end up a Mets fan, Joe?
I am from Westchester County, Katona specifically, and my mom is from Queens, and so, just her side of the family, a lot of Yankees fans, just because the Mets were a late arrival to New York. But being from Queens, it was like, oh, you root for the Mets. And then I'm born in '79, so I was 6, 7 years old when they were winning, and it was just, at the time, it seemed like the smart decision.
Yeah, no, and it's I'm only a few years older than you. I was 10 when they won the World Series, and in 1986 the Yankees were terrible, so it was an easy choice. My brother's 5 years older than me, so he was able to appreciate the late '70s Yankees teams, so I get that. But it's a lot of timing. I think that kids born in the mid-'90s will probably find a lot of, like, oh yeah, of course I'm a Yankees fan, because they were, in the playoffs every year my whole life. Joe, before you joined us, we were talking about the Mets gamble on Jose Reyes, and I got the impression from Twitter that it's not something you're excited about. So give us your thoughts about signing Reyes to a minor league deal.
Yeah, it's definitely not something I'm excited about. I understand it, because if you're going to get anything out of Jose Reyes, you're going to get it out of him on the Mets. They didn't take that much of a financial gamble, so I don't hate it from that standpoint. The one thing I do love about this Mets team, though, is that they seem to all get along. They seem to all get it in terms of, with the exception of maybe Matt Harvey, how to deal with the media and how to deal with being young and successful. And now Jose Reyes coming with a lot of baggage. Yeah. I think that's the official media term for you hit your wife, coming with baggage.
Yeah.
So, I just wonder if it's going to be worth it for the potential negative effects on the clubhouse and the press hoopla and all that for Jose Reyes, who, what does he have left? I mean, he hit 270 across 2 teams last year. He stole, 25 bases or something like that. It's not like we're getting a guy back who's winning batting titles or stealing 70 bases.
Right, exactly. Although, as Matt pointed out earlier, 25 bases is more than the entire Mets team has at this point. So it's
twice as much.
Yeah, it's well worth the gamble, and it is just that. I think in terms of how he'll mesh with the team, it's sort of it's a little thing, but it'll be interesting to see if, when he finally ends up on the Mets after the minor league games, does he try and get his number 7 away from Travis d'Arnaud, or does he just show up and wear whatever they feel like giving him? Does he like, hey, I'm a star, I'm number 7? And it's
I think they said d'Arnaud's giving it to him.
Really?
Wow.
Good for d'Arnaud.
I think I read maybe somebody was messing around on Twitter. I think I saw that.
Oh.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where if d'Arnaud, that says a lot about d'Arnaud, because he doesn't have to.
Yeah.
I'm sure
and
that
he shouldn't.
I'm sure he wouldn't give it to his brother Chase d'Arnaud if they ended up on the same team.
Hey, Joe, I got a question for you. Where do you think Jose play? Like, where do you think he contributes? Like, where does he go in the lineup? Where does he go in the field? Like, I just don't get it.
To me, I think the only way to use him without putting yourself in a position where it comes back to bite you in the ass is have him be off the bench as a pinch hitter, as a pinch runner.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
As a pinch hitter, he's obviously a switch hitter, so you can put him in anywhere. You can run for him anywhere. But I think we're already playing a ton of guys out of position. I mean, Cespedes isn't a center fielder. I can't believe that he's our center fielder every day. I don't know how that ever happened. But then we're playing Matt Reynolds in the outfield. We're playing, guys all over the place. Putting Jose Reyes in to play third base for us or second base for us just scares me.
Yeah, I mean, it could be like, if you guys fondly remember the experiment where we had Daniel Murphy in the outfield, it just, these things happen where you try it out and it doesn't work. So at least he's got they're trying him out at third base, which in theory makes a lot more sense than playing in the outfield. But I feel like you're right that at least to start, he probably won't actually be in the starting lineup, at least for the first few, maybe the first week or whatever. There was a lot of talk on the broadcast about him hitting leadoff, and I'm like, all right, well, settle down there because, you want your leadoff hitter to get on base, and we don't know that he can do that. It's been a while. So I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see. It doesn't mean much, but I want to know what kind of a start he gets off to in the minors. I know he had a start in Brooklyn today. Go figure. There was trouble getting tickets for the Cyclones game, but so we'll see. But yeah, I think that some sort of like super utility guy is probably the best option to get the most production out of him. So I don't know. We'll see, and hopefully, it works out. And if it doesn't, there really wasn't that much ventured. And either way, as we were talking about before you called in, Joe, he's got his $38 million from the Rockies no matter what happens. So he could probably go back to putting his face on the Cabaret bottle of wine. You can't see because you're on the phone. But I've been holding on to this.
I've seen it. In fact, since our fifth loss in 7 games to the Braves, I've been drinking a cocktail of bleach and Reyes Cabernet pretty much the last few hours.
How does that taste? Is it good, or does the bleach actually make the Cabernet taste better?
Bleach probably helps, right?
Yeah, it makes me feel better, guys. That's all that matters.
That's all that matters.
Well, before we break down some of the games from this week, let's talk about some more roster moves. Matt, you might remember a couple weeks ago I blurted out, hey, whatever happened to Brandon Nimmo? Well, now we know. He went 0 for 4 today.
Are you sure that wasn't Conforto?
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. So Conforto finally did get sent down. There was talk for weeks. I was largely convinced that they weren't going to, that maybe he just wasn't get as many starts.
I still think that's kind of a weird move, but
I mean, they talked about how they talked about how they did it for d'Arnaud, and he supposedly talked to d'Arnaud a lot before he went, what to work on. But yeah, I don't know that it really makes the most sense considering what the alternatives are. But Joe, as our guest, let me ask you, what do you think about sending Conforto down? Do you think it'll help him clear his head, or could it just be, a bit of a humiliation for him?
I think it's a good move. I think it will help him clear his head, but I guess it's like, it's a good move right now, but I don't think it should have had to come to this. The way he's been handled since he came up with you're not going to hit against lefties, and you're not going to play every day. But when you play, you're going to hit 3. Is like, how are you the 3 hitter or not in the lineup? That's not consistent thinking. I think if it had been handled since he proved himself as a big league hitter early in the season and certainly last year in the playoffs and everything, and he earned the spot to hit 3rd for us, hey, you're our 3 hitter. You're hitting in the 3 hole until you prove otherwise, and we're not benching you versus lefties or whatever. I don't think it would have come to this. I think this is now where we're at because of the way they handled him mentally and the lineup. And so now it's got to be the move because you just keep moving him down the lineup, benching him half the games, and now he's still not producing.
Right.
You gotta do this.
So you think it just hurt his mental game even more the way they handled him?
Yeah, I do. He proved he was a big league hitter last year, in my opinion. I don't know why we were platooning him to start the season. I understand platooning him when you bring a guy up in August, but he proved he could hit. He proved he could hit lefties. He's our everyday left fielder.
Yeah.
Put him out there and ride with these young guys. Every pitcher that we rode with proved to be right. So let him go out there and take his lumps.
Well, I was going to say that's why. I mean, I guess that's sort of why I agree with you. I think that's a very good point. Putting him in a 3-hole puts immense pressure. I mean, partly because the lineup stinks to high heavens, and it's like, well, we thought he was our best option, but part of me looks at the Mets roster as, so what if he's in a huge slump? Nobody hits. So to me, it's almost like. There isn't really. I think we've created this false sense of like it's all on Conforto. Nobody in the lineup's hitting, so it's like just lay off Conforto and let him work it out in the 7-hole, which is I guess that was my thoughts were like just leave him in the 7-hole, let him play every day, let him play against lefties. If he is a good hitter, I just don't. I'm not sure what the minors really do for somebody who is a professional hitter who came in last year and proved he could play. My other part that I don't like is I don't like basically putting Nimmo now in the same exact position that Conforto was in, which is a high stress. I mean, Nimmo made the last out. It's like. Against Vizcaino, who's a top reliever, you're putting these guys in immense high pressure situations. I don't know what swapping out one for another would be. I understand if you want to move Conforto down. I just don't know that putting Nimmo in there right now is the answer.
And to Joe's point, I mean, yes, obviously sports in general, it's a lot of what have you done for me lately, but who on the Mets active roster hit 2 home runs in a World Series game? Conforto, and now he's down. And I don't know, I hope it helps him clear his head the way they wanted to, but I don't know about any of you, but I saw Ike Davis play first base for the AAA 51s after he had been sent down for the same thing, and it didn't help. And he's I think he just disappeared at some point, like Marty McFly's brother and sister. Just gradually he started becoming transparent, and then he was gone. And I don't even know if I remember Ike Davis at this point.
You know what? I actually had a theory that I just came up with, Joe. You think maybe they just sent him to Vegas to quote unquote clear his head?
Yeah, just a couple of nights out on the town with Wilson Herrera, going to the casino, going to Spearmint Rhino, and then next thing you know, he's hitting again.
Yeah. I like that idea.
I don't know. He strikes me as more of an Olympic Garden guy. But anyway, I think that basically, here's the thing. I have as these two know, Joe, I have an 11-month-old son, so I can't be irresponsible. But what I'd love to do is go out to Vegas and see a 51s game with Conforto and Reyes, in the lineup, because that would be fun. But no, I'll just, hope that they show it on the internet or whatever.
I'll go for you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's true. You go there a lot for work, so enough that people think you live there. But
exactly.
Anyway, so I don't know. I think it's interesting, and I hope it helps him, and I hope he's back before too long, because, you look at the schedule in the next couple weeks, and you're like, yeah, we could probably use Conforto's bat in the lineup, but we have Brandon Nimmo now, who could, really, like Matt was saying, that's a lot of pressure. But someone moving along, someone who's been handling the pressure very well this week is Familia, and now he's started the season with 26 converted save chances. And I think it's 40 back to last regular season, because they don't count the postseason when they do these things. And yes, he had 3 blown saves in the World Series. I would say one of them was his fault. But anyway, he's taken the most saves converted to start the season. He's taken that Mets record away from Armando Benitez. So anytime anybody takes anything from Armando Benitez, I'm excited and I want to talk about it. The interesting thing about Familia, because we saw it within the last month, when it's not a save chance, it's just, he's not the same pitcher. Joe, what do you think about Familia on the whole, his ability in the save situations and then being used in the non-save role?
Well, before we get to Familia specifically, it's like Terry Collins and bullpen. He doesn't know what he's doing. He has no idea how to manage a bullpen. It's like he's throwing darts at a dartboard with pictures of his pitchers all over it and just hoping for the best. Obviously, Familia, it has a different sort of focus when it's not a save situation. He's been great in save situations, as exciting as he makes some of the games where he puts the leadoff guy on and then, gets us all on the edge of our seat and then gets the save. But it's like, if you know that about him, why are we putting him into games and taxing him when it seems like every time that happens, the next day it's like a real save situation where it's like a 1-run game and we need him. just like give him a day off. Addison Reed, obviously blew the game against the Braves this week on the late inning homer, but he is a former closer. He's a competent guy. If we don't need to pitch him in the eighth and then go to Familia in the ninth just because that's baseball these days. It's like, let him have the ninth in non-save situations and save that Familia focus for what he's good at.
Agree.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not to the same egregious level, but, Matt Williams of the Nationals essentially lost his job because he's like, I pitch my eighth inning guys in the eighth inning and my ninth inning guys in the ninth inning. And sometimes, look, I'm glad to see Familia get the 4 or 5 out save occasionally. Apparently he has I don't know if he has the most, but I forget what number they said yesterday. I should have written it down. But, I like using him in that way because I'd rather he get 5 outs when they matter than, he hasn't pitched in a few days, so let's bring him out with a 7-0 lead and hopefully he can hang on. So I like the way that he pitches, obviously, when he gets the saves. But yeah, I don't know. I think that there are occasions where it makes sense to use him, when he hasn't pitched in a while. Maybe another losing streak is around the corner. Hopefully not, but I don't know. It's just all 4 of the wins they have this week, Familia got the save. So he's a huge part of the team. And, obviously I want them to keep him rested, but not too rested. And I don't know. It's you're right, though. I'd like somebody other than Terry to handle those decisions. But
yeah, I guess I had a question, Joe. Which reliever do you think's arm is going to fall off first on the Mets?
Oh, Henderson. It's already fallen off.
No, that's true. Who's next to go? I guess who's next to go? Robles?
Yeah.
Well, that's who I'm going to talk about next.
Or is it Addison Reed? I mean, Addison Reed's been pitching a tremendous amount.
That's true.
Yeah, it could be Reed.
Speaking of Hansel Robles, I wanted to, we've been very critical of Hansel Robles on the show on more than one occasion, but he was great on Tuesday in the game where Colon was the scheduled starter, and he threw 1 pitch. I think it was 1 pitch. He had 1 batter. And then Robles pitched, 3 2/3 inning, and it was way more than he'd ever pitched before. And, he looked great. And, Terry being Terry, he trotted him out there for a couple more innings only a few nights later, but that's all right. He looked great on that night, and in a game where you just feel like, okay, we all know what the Kansas City Royals are capable of and, how they take advantage of any kind of mistakes or anything that happens unexpectedly. And I don't know, I was really impressed by Robles. Matt, you first. What did you think of Matt, of yourself?
Listen, I mean, it was a really fluky thing that happened to Colon, who is our workhorse, has been all year. The one guy where you're like, all right, you know what? At least we won't have to use 5 relievers today.
Right.
It's weirdly, Colon's become the guy where you're like, all right, well, at least some of the bullpen will get rest. And that didn't happen. And, maybe that was the best outing of Robles' career, for all I know. I don't really know,
Well, he'd never thrown anywhere near that many pitches. Yeah, I think the record was 60.
It was amazing, and it set up, weirdly, like we said, the best week we've had since we started doing this podcast at 4-2.
Yeah, Joe, the way that the shows work is we started doing it in mid-May. Basically, a good week is we have a 500 week or maybe one game over 500. Most weeks we lose the Sunday game right before the show, so then we have a sub 500 week, and it happened again today, but we still had a 4-2 week. So this for us doing the show was a great week, and of course you see the Mets, they play really hard, and a couple of tough games against the Royals they win, and then as you mentioned, they split a series against the Braves, who swept them only last weekend. They're the worst team in baseball by record, and I posed this question last week. If you get beaten by the worst team in baseball, does that make you the worst team in baseball on that day? Your thoughts, Joe?
No, I don't think so. I think the Braves just have a weird this horrible Braves team that can't beat anybody has to win some game somewhere, and it just seems like we are that team for them, and that sucks as Mets fans. But we're still hanging around despite all the injuries and despite everything. We come into a series with the Nationals and we're down 3 games. We're going to lose games that we shouldn't lose as well, and it just seems like all of those games are going to be against the Braves. We beat, we play a World Series rematch against the Royals, and like you said, we get both those games, and then we come back with the worst team in baseball, and we split after getting swept. It just seems like the Braves prospects and young kids and the guys who are the Freddie Freemans are hanging around going, you know what, screw the Mets. We'll show you reigning NL champs, and they've got our number at the moment, and it makes me ill, but it's just the way it is.
Yeah, no, it is just the way it is. And, when we talk about that series against the Braves, they're lucky to have gotten that split because, Mets had an 8-0 lead going into the 5th inning in that game. And, things stand out sometimes when you hear during the broadcast. And Keith Hernandez said, those second division teams, they usually roll over if you jump them early enough. And I'm like, well, I hope they don't hear you say that because and then there it was 6 runs in the 5th and they hung on, but I don't know. I like Matz a lot, but he seems to really be prone to those kind of outings. Joe, what do you think happened in that game, and in general, your thoughts on Matz?
I think I love Steven Matz. I think on our pitching staff, as far as the future goes, he's only behind Syndergaard to me because he's lefty and because he's got such great stuff. But the one thing that you see with Matz when he's out there is even when he's cruising and he gives up, he makes a bad pitch and a guy, hits a homer, he gets really angry. He's pounding his glove. He's cursing. He's throwing stuff when he gets back into the dugout. I think as great as his stuff is and as great as he's been in the big league since we brought him up, he's still very young. He's still very immature. And I think he loses his cool and he loses his focus, really easily. And I think with a couple more months in the big leagues, a little bit more time to mature, I think a lot of that stuff's going to go away, and you're going to see him have, an inning that falls apart a little bit, but instead of it being 6 runs, it's 2 or 3 runs.
Yeah, no, I think that, that's obviously the damage control we're trying to weather with Harvey right now is having that 1 inning not get out of hand. So hopefully they learn the same thing. Matt, your thoughts on that game as you watched it, because we were actually trading emails at that point, and also, like Joe was saying about Matts in general.
There's nothing worse than I literally went out and walked my dog, and it was 8-0. And the park is across the street from my house. So I'm playing fetch with my dog, and I come back and it's 8-6, and I'm like,
yeah, and Matt's is playing fetch with the Braves hitters.
But what's weird is I don't. It's odd because like when I watch Matt's pitch, and you see him cruising along, it's unthinkable to me with his stuff to have 6 runs. So I guess maybe you're right, Joe. Maybe it is immaturity because his stuff is too good to allow a 6-run inning. I mean, that's just not what, if you think he's the number 2 guy, I don't know. I guess that's debatable. I mean, obviously it's either him or DeGrom. See, I like DeGrom because for right now, I think DeGrom has the maturity to work through when he doesn't have his best stuff, or if he throws a bad pitch, he's going to come right back and shake it off. So to me, I mean, I think maybe long term Mets, because he's 3 years younger, he may be, a number 2 guy for the Mets. But right now, it's just unfathomable that you could give up 6 runs to this Braves lineup, which is garbage.
Yeah, because Freddie Freeman's the guy who shouldn't beat you, and then there's everybody else who, obviously he's the guy who can beat you, so you just have to figure out how to pitch Freddie Freeman, which, the Mets did in April, but the whole Braves team wasn't hitting.
Wait, hold on. Can I ask a question, though, to all of you guys?
Sure.
Why do we pitch to Freddie Freeman at all in the entire series? What's wrong with intentionally or non-intentionally walking him?
Like the Cubs did to Bryce Harper earlier this year. They walked him 12 times.
What do you think? I mean,
I think especially against a team like that, 100%. Why not? Why not take that moment? And that gives the whole team time to kind of like gather yourselves and not keep the runs going.
It's a lot of pressure, yeah.
Yeah.
And not in the instance, where Colon gave up the home run today. That's just what happened, I mean, there was nobody on base. He he was able to really turn on an 85-mile-per-hour fastball. Good for him. But, I think that he is, there are these teams, like Keith calls them the second division teams. Teams like the Braves have only really the one guy. Like Nick Markakis, you don't have to walk at this point in his career. But Freddie Freeman, he's on a tear right now, and I think he went 3 for 3 today. And some people would say that maybe he's a little too comfortable at the plate. That's the old school mentality. Obviously, we don't hit people anymore in baseball. But 2 other points that I wanted to make. Matt, you picked DeGrom over Matz, even though he's from Long Island. I think you might have to turn in your Long Island card.
I said right now.
Right now. Oh, okay. All right. But, and then Andrea, your thoughts sort of on, when you see that that's what happens in a game, that the Mets are up 8-0 going into the 5th inning, and then the inning ends and it's 8-6. And if you have any thoughts on Steven Matz, and if you're true to the 516 area code, unlike Matt.
Oh, yeah, we got 2 Long Islanders here, Jack.
That's really funny because, of course, I always want to be true to my home.
Of course, yeah.
Of course, my home peeps. But I have to say that I actually completely agree with Joe as far as the maturity level. And, I mean, DeGrom is I'm a big fan of his. So I would choose him, not even knowing that there was an age difference. I think it does come with your demeanor and the way you conduct yourself, and like Matt said, the fact that he could go one pitch, mess up, and then he is just right back in okay, that's gone, it's out of my brain. Any pitcher who can do that is really amazing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good pitchers who can't do that. A great example is Zach Greinke. Like, if he gets a couple guys on and gives up a couple hits, he was one of the best pitchers last year. And you get men on, he's out there talking to himself, and he'll give up a few more hits. But anyway, back to your point, Andrea.
All I'm trying to say is with DeGrom up there, I don't ever feel nervous. Like, I literally watch and I don't feel a wave of like what's going to happen next, because I do feel like he gets control. I think with Matt, and I think even with Reed, I kind of feel like this. I get a little nervous, like, oh, they're so cute, they're gonna like do well, and oh, but he gave that up. Okay, we'll try and make that up somewhere else. Like, I mean, obviously it's not just an attractive factor, but I'm just saying they look like their whole demeanor, the way they play, is kind of boyish style still to me.
Right. Back to DeGrom. Joe, your thoughts on the way he pitched yesterday against Julio Teheran, who, now 2 starts in a row has, pitched like Cy Young in his Cy Young season, that he looked great again. And, I think that DeGrom gave up a couple more hits, but it didn't matter. Just talk about how he's pitching right now, DeGrom, and what you think that says about his ability and where we might see him go the rest of the season.
Well, I will, to go back, I said I would take Matt kind of long-term in the future, even over DeGrom. I don't want that to come off as that I don't love Jacob DeGrom.
Sure.
If we go into a wild card situation at, one of those, if the season ended today's thing, and I had my pick of the guys, DeGrom would be the guy. I love Jacob DeGrom. What he did in the playoffs last year was incredible. You see that, like you said, he's a bulldog. You can get guys on, and you need a strikeout. You get a guy on third with 1 out, and you're like, he's got to strike out 2, or this guy's probably going to score. He's going to do it. I love his stuff. I love the way he competes. The Mets go out and get early runs. He doesn't have to be that sharp. He'll still go and get, he'll do what he's got to do to get to 6 or 7. But when, his back's against the wall and he's pitching against somebody who's also pitching great, he's going to keep pace. And that's why I have more trust in Jacob DeGrom than just about anybody on the Mets pitching staff. My thoughts before were kind of like in terms of these guys as prospects and long-term view. But I love Jacob DeGrom, and I know regardless of if he has a bad start or if he has a bad inning or if he has a bad, couple of innings, that if he's in the mix and it's a close game, he's going to be able to, just turn that focus up because he's a little more mature and he knows he has great stuff. And I have complete trust in him. Regardless of what happens, next start or last start or whatever. I love Jacob deGrom.
Right. I would probably say he's up there with Cologne and his ability to shrug off a bad inning or a bad start. I mean, last year I was at NLDS Game 5 at Dodger Stadium, and he did not pitch well, but you want to talk about a bulldog performance. He can gut out a win, or at least, a no decision in a game where he's not pitching well. And some of the other guys I'm not as sure about. I mean, even Syndergaard has shown flashes of when it's not there, he might give up 4 runs. Then he'll hit 2 home runs and that might help. But it's interesting. I think you're right. He's the guy that you feel most comfortable if it's just not there. Being able to kind of navigate it.
You know what I think, too, for this Mets team? The difference between 3 runs and 4 runs is monumental.
I agree.
Right?
Unfortunately,
DeGrom's the guy who, if he's not pitching well, will give up 2 or 3 runs and give us a chance, a slim one. With 3 runs on the board, let's face it, we have no chance of winning a game. But I feel like he's like our 3-run limit guy.
Yeah, no, today's a perfect example. I mean, it was a Cologne start, but when it was 1-0 going into the 8th, you're like, okay, they could probably win this. And then it was 5-0. You're like, well, that's not happening.
All right, I have another unorthodox theory that I was going to propose here. Joe, what are your thoughts on? I knew this was going to happen, and I'm going to whatever. I'm going to lie and say that I'm psychic, but I actually did have a feeling that this is going to go that way. I didn't want them to take Cologne out. Is that crazy?
When he got hit?
In the 8th. No, I'm talking about in the 8th inning.
No.
I didn't want to take him out.
Him to keep
he only had 75 pitches.
Joe, what were your thoughts on that? I thought keep Cologne in a 1-0 game. Let him be an automatic out, but leave him out there.
Of course. I mean, what Bartolo Colon? It's one thing when we're talking about these 20-somethings with crazy arms and all that. We're talking about Bartolo Colon. The guy will throw 300 pitches if you ask him to. I don't even think he's counting. Let him go.
Yeah.
This overthinking of our bullpen, and I know that there's overthinking of our bullpen because 4 of the guys are crazy pitching prospects with insane velocity and crazy stuff, and it's all like who's going to get hurt, who's not going to get hurt, pitch counts, the modern baseball. Bartolo Colon is literally from another time. So just let Bartolo Colon go out there and just don't even tell him his pitch count. Don't even tell him what inning it is.
I was just going to say that.
That's true. Home starts, when he's on the mound, they should take the graphics down and just, don't worry about it. Just go out and throw some more pitches. It's one of those things that, obviously if Granderson had hit a home run there, then we'd be like, oh, yeah, I disagreed with it at the time, but look, it paid off. And that's the thing, whatever you're going to bring in after Cologne, because both Reed and Familia were not available, they made that very clear, odds are pretty good that they're not going to pitch as well, and Bastardo definitely didn't. I don't think he got an out. So, I wasn't thinking that about the game now, but now that you say it, I'm like, yeah, he definitely could have gone a little bit longer. I mean, he could have pitched. Yeah. He could still be pitching now, really.
I just don't know what the conventional. I guess look, Terry Collins also is literally from another era, right?
True.
And so I don't think he even thinks outside the box on like, oh, the pitcher's up in the 8th and we're down 1, so I guess I have to put a pinch hitter in, But let's look at the totality of what we have left here, right? It's like we still have 4 at bats left to get 1 run. Also, keep it at a 1-run game versus the alternative, which is. Even giving up 1 run, the game's over. Yeah. I mean, they ended up scoring 5, and then we came back.
I think they got 2. But
you got to keep it at 1.
Yeah, and Bartolo Colon at that point gave you the best. I mean, even if he'd had 120 pitches, like Joe says, he still gave you the best chance to not even necessarily win, but just. There's that stat that annoys me in fantasy baseball. Some leagues have the hold, but it is actually very important to have somebody on your team who can, just hold and maintain, and he'd be the starting pitcher. So it wouldn't have been.
And you know what else too? And what bothers me about it is I think we would all be sitting here if he had kept Cologne in and Cologne batted and he struck out. I think we'd all, and it ended up being a 1-0 game. I think we'd be okay with that.
Yeah, especially if he lost his helmet when he swung, because everybody loves when he loses his helmet. I want to move on to next week, but before we do, I need to give a shout out to Kelly Johnson, because without Kelly Johnson, the Mets would have gone, I think, 24 innings without scoring. But, that pinch hit home run yesterday in the 11th, I just felt like, that had all of the indications of one of those 18, 19 inning games. You know, neither team could score. They both had really great starting pitching. And, you know, I love Kelly Johnson as a guy off the bench. I liked when they traded for him from the Braves last year. I like that they did it this year. It's going to be great when they trade for him from the Braves next year. You know, just every year, let's just add him somewhere, you know, in like June. But I don't know. That's not even really, nobody needs to comment on that. That's just a shout out. I was very excited. I was just like, good for him, you know, because, you know, it's like, why do you guys keep trading me away? But anyway, I'll hit a home run for the other team. Anyway, so as we look at next week, we're heading into 3 very important games against the Washington Nationals. And, you know, the Nationals, had lost 7 games in a row before today. A couple of them very late. One of them in particular because a ball went between Michael Taylor's legs at Dodger Stadium. But I don't know. I'm glad they won today because I don't want to face a team that has lost 8 in a row. But it's
and they lost Strasburg today.
And they lost. Yeah, they DL'd them retroactively to I think Tuesday. So yeah, I think you know it's good that they got a win out of their system. I don't know how ready the Mets team is to face them, you know, in DC, but they sure have played well there the last couple seasons after, you know, many years of not playing well there. So I'll go to our guest first. Joe, do you think that they're ready for this matchup with the Nationals?
I don't know. I mean, Big League Baseball, when you're playing 162 games, it's like, what is ready?
Yeah.
You know, if they were healthy, they'd be more ready. That's for sure. But you know, it's a grind, and I think what's important about this series is we're certainly not ready with who we're kind of trotting out there every day. But if you trot out your B team and you go into a series down 3 games and you just win the series, you know, you win 2-1 and you pick up a game with not your best guys, to me, I think that gives you a little bit of like, oh, well, now we've got, you know, we've got them a couple more games before the All-Star break. Like, we're right there, and we can do this, and we can actually, like they did last year, get up in the division, and then when people start coming back, you know, widen the gap. I'm hoping that's the way it goes. So, you know, I don't know, like you said, if they're ready, but I'd just like to see them go in there and battle. Obviously, we're going to have Syndergaard and Harvey and Max again.
Yeah, that part's unclear, but yeah, it's definitely Syndergaard and Harvey. And as Matt mentioned, Strasburg will be on the DL. The biggest crime is that we're going to miss Gio Gonzalez, who is just, I think lost isn't a strong enough word for just how he's pitched this season. And you saw flashes of it last year. So, you know, Joe Ross is most likely to pitch tomorrow. So you feel like, okay, that's a favorable matchup. And then Harvey and Scherzer possibly on Tuesday, and if not, then Scherzer will pitch on Wednesday. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, you're getting a couple of breaks, but we'll have to see how it all shapes out. And you know, they're going into that series 3 games behind Washington for the division lead. They're now tied with the Marlins for that 3 games. You know, they could have pulled they could have still been 2 games behind if they won today, but in a way that doesn't matter as far as I'm concerned, because they're going to play them 7 times before the All-Star break. So how they play those games is very important. Sure, you want to be a game closer, but Matt, what do you think as you look at that series that's about to start tomorrow?
You guys know I've been saying this for basically the entire month. The 2 words are treading water.
Yes.
Which is, again, just keep doing that, right? We have 14 games before the break. 7 of them are against the Nationals. Just go 7-7, or you know, out of the 7 games against the Nationals, you have to win at least 3.
Yeah,
that's the bottom line, right? You know, and
yeah,
and
it's kind of the reverse of what I thought for the Nationals last year when the Mets were running them down. It's like the Nats only needed to win 1 game in each of those series, and then they lost all the games in both of those series.
And you know, we've been pretty good, other than getting swept by the Braves. We've been pretty good at this treading water thing. Right. You know, we've managed to stay. You know, at worst, we were 4 games over 500. You know, it's like I'd like to see us at 10 games over, but I don't know if that's realistic. Harvey still hasn't proven that he's, more than a serviceable number 4 journeyman, pitcher. I wanted to ask you, Praino, I mean, what do you think Matt Harvey is Is, you know, like at this point, I don't know. I think he's just like, maybe we just have to accept that he's just like a decent number 4 journeyman, and maybe he's just not an ace in any way, shape, or form.
Pretty good number 4 though, if that is the case. You know,
Yeah.
When you look at pitching matchups, I'll take Matt Harvey on his best day against most everybody's 4, if not their 3. And obviously, we don't always get Matt Harvey's best day, but I like that. I like that he's put in that position mentally. It's like, hey man, that, you know, let's see what we get out of you today, because I think that pisses him off a little bit, and I think that makes him pitch better. And it really, it's you know, it's a lot like last year with injuries and us not hitting, but now you mix in a little bit that the pitchers who were just lights out, every guy we brought up worked out, everybody figured it out. It's like now they've got a little bit, and we're still hanging around 3 games back. If these guys all kind of hit their stride simultaneously, I mean, right now we're in a playoff spot. You know, that's crazy. We're starting James Loney at first base. We started Reynolds in the outfield the other day. Jose Reyes was just re-signed.
Right.
And we're 3 games out. Like, if things start to break our way, and that includes Matt Harvey kind of figuring it out a little bit and becoming what Matt Harvey is capable of, we're right there. And I think the National Series and 7 games with them before the break really helps. I think that our Mets squad thinks a little bit like we kind of own this Nationals team, and I hope that they come out and they act that way.
Yeah, I think that they should definitely come out that way. And one of the things we haven't mentioned is that Papelbon is also unavailable. I think he's officially on the DL, and if he's not, they're not using him right now because of an injury. Andrea, what was your thought?
I was going to say, I think it's something that they need to take literally game by game, day by day. And it's funny because you were talking about Harvey, and I feel like that's kind of something, or a place where we need to think out of the box also. And it was a really good point you made, and I feel like Harvey's one of those players that maybe if Collins thinks a little outside of the box when it comes to him being prepared for everything day by day with the Nationals, because literally with the news that happens so quickly with this Mets team right now, how can you think anything past that, really? You know, you really
don't even know who's going to be on the team tomorrow.
You really don't. So why freak out about it? Take it game by game.
Yeah, and to put it back on the Nationals for a second, you know, I referenced how they lost 7 games in a row, and a couple of them were late, you know, sort of like heartbreaking losses, but you still lost 7 games in a row. And it's interesting because there was so much fuss made in the offseason that, like, oh my God, they signed Dusty Baker. But I never saw that as like, oh, that's going to change things because he's such a great manager. I mean, if you just look back to his most recent stint in Cincinnati, I mean, he brought them to the playoffs and they fired him anyway, you know? And, you know, you just kind of look at his body of work. He's older. He's chewed a lot more toothpicks. And I don't know how much of an impact he makes because the team doesn't look that different from last year's team. Just that Drew Storen's not on it. But other than that, it doesn't seem that different, and they seem to have a lot of the same problems. I'll ask everybody, but Joe, you first. How much of a difference does the manager make? I mean, Matt Williams was run out of town, but you know the team's playing about as well as they were for him, for Dusty Baker.
Yeah, I think Dusty Baker is certainly an upgrade from Matt Williams, just in the way that, I mean, there was guys choking each other in their dugout down the stretch last year.
Very true.
Hard to be a downgrade. You know, when they got Dusty Baker, what I was worried about, but not, you know, what I was thinking was, oh, this could really turn around the Nationals and they run away with the NL East, but we hang around and maybe we sneak in a wild card and we can still do damage with our pitching staff if we make the playoffs, even if it's, you know, having to win a wild card game just to move on. But the fact that isn't the way it's gone, that it didn't change their whole culture, and we're talking, you know, we're a week plus out of the All-Star break, and we're terrible and injured and can't hit again, and we're 2 games out.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, maybe it's not, you know, it's an upgrade because no one's been choked yet, but maybe it's not that much of an upgrade.
Yeah, you know, it wasn't just any guy getting choked. You know, it was the face of the franchise getting choked. So, yeah, you're right. It's a little bit better off. I don't know. I guess we'll see. I'm very interested in that that series and really those 7 games against the Nationals, I think that will, it's definitely kind of an obvious statement, but it'll tell us pretty much everything we need to know about where the Mets are at the break, what they need to do. I mean, if they play, like Matt said, if they tread water in that series, that's great. Anything above treading water, like if they get 4 out of 7, that's just some delicious country gravy sprinkled on top. So not only do they play the Nationals, but we get, 4 games against the Cubs after the 3 against the Nats. And Thursday should be John Lackey against DeGrom, and John Lackey gave up 7 earned runs in 4.1 innings yesterday. So hopefully we see that. Then I think we'll see Jason Hamill in Cologne. And then I don't know what I have planned on Saturday, but I'm going to probably cancel it because I think that's, obviously you never know how it shakes out, but it should be Arrieta Syndergaard. And
remember, I was saying he hasn't had a marquee matchup this year.
Yeah, because like Syndergaard will miss Kershaw, he'll miss everybody. But you're right. He's going to get Arrieta, and then I guess Sunday would be John Lester Harvey. So I mean, it's not a particularly favorable matchup for the Mets, but. I don't know. Are we hoping they split that series too, Matt? Or
I got to be honest. I'm terrified of the Cubs right now.
Yeah,
I know that another league right now from where our lineup is at versus theirs. I mean, it's ridiculous.
They just got roughed up by the Marlins, but I think the Marlins are putting a better product on the field than the Mets are right now, and then the Nationals too. Yeah. So. And I don't know. Joe, your thoughts on the series later this week against the Cubs?
It's crazy to not be afraid of the Cubs with their lineup, but it's the same thing a little bit to me as this Nationals team. Is we swept them in the playoffs last year, and it's baseball is such a funny game that you go out there and you get a good pitching performance from your guys. You really only have to score 3 or 4 runs, and I know 4 runs from the Mets is like a miracle, but those pitching matchups aren't that bad for us, and I think that being that it's in New York and it's sandwiched between some national series, we've got it, like you said, we've got to split. I mean, to me, you can't get swept, and even going 1 and 3 is like it hurts more mentally than it does in the standings. And I think just battling with them and splitting a series when you're going to face Arrieta is, I think to me that's saying, hey guys, we just split with you, and we don't have our best stuff. We'll see you in July in Chicago, and we'll probably see you in October.
Right, exactly. No. I mean, I think that's a great point. And, I mean, there is the fact that it's Lackey and Jason Hamill also in the mix, And I don't know. I hope they're at least fun games to watch because there's, the Mets in the postseason was a lot of fun to watch against the Cubs. But in the regular season, they lost the season series. Were they swept in the season series by the Cubs? Or I know that happened for the Pirates. I think that it also happened for the Cubs. But Andrea, as you think about both of those series, really, the Nationals and the Cubs this week, what do you think about this week, and what kind of expectations do you have for the week?
I want to hope that, like I said, after taking it day by day or game by game, which who knows, that's me talking, so not Terry Collins, that if they do decently against the Nationals, that maybe that feeds a little positivity into the Cubs, like just because you just don't know, like Joe's saying, you never know what level the Cubs are on those days either. Obviously,
they did get swept by the Cardinals earlier this week, and
anything's possible. That's what's so awesome about baseball.
It's
true. People do make mistakes. I'd like to see the Mets make a little less mistakes.
We haven't even talked about base running. We're not going to.
Or through your legs type things that you don't have your catcher back there.
We've already done an hour, so it's like we don't have time for that stuff.
Yeah, so I'm just saying. I hope that they maybe use a little momentum or gain a little momentum in going into that, because if they don't have that, then I'm just gonna say it's over for the week. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I don't know.
I hate saying that because it is so you never know. But
no, you want them to be competitive. competitive, close games, and if anyone makes mistakes, you want it to be Jason Worth dropping a pop fly like he did in Milwaukee today. I almost said Miami. Milwaukee today, which did happen, I saw, but the Nats were able to hang on. So we're about to wrap up here, Joe, but what we always do here on the show is we try to highlight who we think was the player of the week. Now, we didn't prepare you for that, but if you think about it, what's your snap reaction to who the best Mets player was this week?
I mean, you know, I think about this question like the Mets must think about who they're giving the belt to in the locker room. And my guy for the week, because he earned it a little bit, but also because I think he needs a couple days with the belt. I'm giving it to Robles for coming out after Colon's injury and having that strong performance. We were talking about how Familia is great in save situations before and not otherwise. It seems like Robles is normally only great when it doesn't matter, whether they're up 7 or down 7.
Yeah,
and that was his. Yeah, he turned the corner. He turned the corner. Did. Hopefully for the year.
Nice.
Yeah. No, Robles is actually also my pick because I also have this expectation that he'll never even be under consideration again. But I hope I'm wrong. I think the obvious pick would have been Familia. But he was great this week. But I was just really impressed by Hansel Robles because he's, you know, I can't think of the last time where I would have said, hey, you know who really impressed me? Hansel Robles. He was great in 2 outings this week. Matt, do you have a player of the week?
Yeah, you know, interestingly, this just was from today more than the week. I'm going to give it to Colon because he got hit right in his thumb. On his pitching hand.
Right back out there.
And it seems like everybody on the Mets would be out for, you know, for the foreseeable future. But, I mean, this guy just goes to McDonald's and eats a hamburger, and he's back out there, like, stronger than ever.
Yeah.
You know? It's all he needed. He rubbed a little bit on his hand.
But he's like, I mean, he is like Harris. Sauce. He's like Harris from Major League. You know, like, you got your Crisco, you got your Vegacil.
The worst thing for Colon, though, is when he goes to McDonald's, he has to get a couple of Happy Meals, you know, one for each of his families.
Oh, my God.
He's also wearing like a Happy Meal hat on his head.
Yeah, that's also true. Andrea,
yes.
Your thought for player of the week this
Matt
week?
and I are we're for some reason on the same page. Mine was between Colon and Cabrera.
Okay.
And I'm going to go with Cabrera because we all know how much pitching matters. And so, you know, I like to give it to like the maybe not recognized guy.
He had a couple of great days in a row, though.
He had a couple of home runs, that, not for nothing, against Kansas City that we really needed.
Yeah.
And he made a that second base out was amazing.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I just think he's become what we wanted Conforto to become, you know, step up in and take that position. So I'm going to go with Cabrera. And while I'm on this, can I just make a little shout out myself?
Please.
Yeah. Because we have a huge follower on Twitter, 2 of them. First of all, Samuel Hernandez, who found us like right away, and he's been awesome in following us on Twitter. And then Richard Herlihy, I hope I'm saying it right. He's awesome. He keeps me up to date when I'm traveling and I can't maybe watch the games.
That's
He's
great.
giving me the tweets.
So you don't need the MLB app because you have these followers.
I have Richard Herlihy. So thank you guys for watching the show and keep, you know, following us and tweeting us and tagging us and talking to us about the games and what your thoughts are. So.
No, we appreciate all of that. And we also appreciate our guest, Joe Praino. You co-host the Dirty Sports podcast. That's what happens when I'm like, oh my God, we only have 2 minutes. And I just start talking too fast. The Dirty Sports podcast. And if you can, in a very brief minute, tell us why your Twitter name is Fix Your Life.
It's, well, first of all, I got on Twitter and my cousin had already taken Joe Praino.
Okay.
And that was before I realized you could do things like the real _ Joe Praino. So I stole a saying that my younger brother used to say all the time. He would just tell people to fix their life if they didn't want to do something that he wanted to do, and then he would just shame you so quickly and cut you so deep. Like, he'd be like, I have tickets to the Mets game. Do you want to go? I'd be like, oh, I got a date with this girl. And he'd just go, fix your life. And he'd walk away.
I love that.
And it would kill me. And so I just stole it from him years ago. And I was like, I'm going to use fix your life.
Great. Well, Joe, thanks so much for spending time with us, and hopefully we're able to sit down with you again before the season's over.
Charlie, we'll go watch a game on the West Side soon. The Mets bar.
Yeah.
You guys got to come.
Yeah.
Oh, is that?
Tell these guys. Tell these guys.
There's they do Sunday brunch games at West 4th.
Yeah, I went to one of those last year.
Place.
Yeah, we'll have to do a group outing. Well, thanks again, Joe Praino of the Dirty Sports Podcast on Twitter at Fix Your Life, and we appreciate your time. And speaking of time, we're way over time. This is so much longer than any show we've ever done before. I think you could take a couple of our episodes and fill the same amount of time. So for myself, at Christian DMZ, for at Andy Fasano, and at Matt Ritter 1, and don't forget us, we're at ABTV Mets. You know, follow us too, and we'll keep you in touch with what we're doing. And we will see you next time on Mets Wrap 360.
Go Mets!
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.